A lawyer reached out to the police and volunteered his client.
He can tell them exactly who committed the crime.
He was actually a primary target, the guy they really would like to have shot. The bad guys, they don't care. It's revenge, retaliation, revenge, retaliation.
October 19th, 2012, Syracuse, New York. It's just after 8 p.m. on the city's north side.
The Syracuse Police Department received 3 911 calls for a shooting.
Officers rush to the location where they find 2 victims.
They found one victim on the ground. And then they also found another person that had a minor, very minor injury from a gunshot wound that grazed his back, his upper back.
The man on the ground is struggling to breathe. Officers attempt first aid.
They didn't see obvious injury to him at that point. So what they did is they cut his shirt off, and then they spotted a small amount of blood. He was shot once in the left side near his armpit because of the trauma from the gunshot. Most likely his lungs were filling with blood. The body's trying very hard, working overdrive to get air in. Just a minute or two after that, our ambulance crew arrived and was able to provide advanced medical care.
EMTs rushed the man to the hospital. The second victim identifies himself as 20-year-old Shavoki Bloodworth.
He was looked at by ambulance personnel on the scene and declined further treatment.
Shavoki tells police he doesn't know the other victim. At the hospital, the man fighting for his life is soon identified as 30-year-old Walter Bell, a resident of South Carolina. Walter Bell III was born on July 12, 1982, in Orangeburg, South Carolina. At a young age, Walter's parents separated, and he went to live with his mother in New York.
Walter was born in South Carolina, but spent most of his childhood and growing up in Long Island.
There, Walter was part of a large community of family and friends that included 2 brothers, 4 younger sisters, and his childhood best friend, Latia.
Everybody was just carefree, just running around having a good time, causing destruction with the parents, you know, running the parents crazy.
Walter took care of his siblings.
Walter was the protector. He felt like he had to protect his sisters. The sisters got boyfriends, and he had to interrogate them.
He's just like so family oriented. He cares about people and he put others before himself.
In his teenage years, Walter's mom grew concerned that her son was headed down the wrong path.
Walter started getting into a little bit of the rougher lifestyle of Long Island, so his mom decided to send him back to South Carolina to live with his dad.
Orangeburg, South Carolina was a big change. But not too long after he moved, Walter welcomed a familiar face to town.
My family was gradually moving to South Carolina because there was land owned within the family. And so when we moved, I mean, I boo-hoo cried from New York to Virginia. And I was kind of relieved when I got closer to South Carolina because that phone rang and it was Walter calling me.
In South Carolina, Walter and Latia's lifelong friendship blossomed into a full-blown romance.
Walter was always there for her. She was always there for him. He was gonna marry Tia.
Walter's home life was rocky. During their senior year of high school, Walter and Latia came to depend on each other like they never had before.
He had nowhere to stay, I had nowhere to stay due to, you know, family issues. And We walked and walked and walked throughout the nights. We went up into a football field and slept in the announcer's box for weeks.
So it was like him and Tia, like, was pretty much like just living on the street.
The young lovers were on their own. Walter's sister-in-law tried to help.
Santana would sneak food and covers and blankets and pillows and things out of the window for us at night. And nobody knew we was outside that window but her.
In 2003, more trouble caught up with Walter.
Walter got into some things that he should not have. He was accused of breaking into homes and stealing things.
21-year-old Walter was arrested and charged with second-degree burglary. He pled guilty and was sentenced to 15 years in prison.
I cried and I cried and I cried. And we were allowed to spend some time together afterwards, back by the holding cells. And Walter looked at me and said, the only thing I want you to do is live your life to whatever makes you happy. Just make sure that when I come home, I have a place to come home to.
When he was in prison, like, it was never a time that he didn't write, he didn't call, he always kept in contact, always.
There was a lot of ups and downs, a lot of me trying to find myself, a lot of me trying to rebuild myself back up.
In October 2010, after almost 7 years behind bars, Walter was granted parole. By then, Latia was a single mother to 3 young kids. Walter and Latia picked up where they left off.
When he came home, like, he loved her kids. He took all of her kids in, like, they was his kids.
When he started bonding with the kids is when it was just like, okay, well, I mean, it is what it is. We can't change it.
The childhood sweethearts settled into life together, with Walter taking on the role of stepdad. By the summer of 2012, they had plans to marry. But first, they needed a fresh start.
He was unable to find work because of his record. He was just trying and just staying focused and not going back on the prior ways that he was doing, the things he was doing before he went to jail. Like, he was trying to make a way and work, like actually work.
And then Walter hears about an opportunity back in New York.
Walter's cousin offered to help him get a job at a recycling center in Syracuse.
I said, well, I don't know. I really don't want to go back to New York. And he looked me in my eyes and he said, Tia, I'll ride with you no matter what. Whatever decisions you make, I ride with you on it. I want you to ride with me on this. That Friday, we packed up 3 laundry bags of clothes and shoes, packed the kids up, and got on the Greyhound.
The couple stayed with friends and in hotels until they could find a place of their own. Around the same time, Latia delivered news that there was more change to come.
I said, Walter, and I showed him the pregnancy test. He was like, are you serious? He was so happy. Within 5 minutes, he had done called his mom. He had done called his oldest sister. He called his god sister. He was just so happy.
He was so excited that he was about to be a dad. Like, nobody couldn't take that moment from him. Like, that moment meant the world.
Just 6 weeks after arriving in Syracuse, Walter Bell is fighting for his life at a hospital following a life-threatening gunshot wound. Another man, Shavoki Bloodworth, was grazed by a bullet in the same attack. He is still on the scene.
He voluntarily gave part of his story as to what happened, as to how he saw the incident unfold.
Which isn't much.
Mr. Bloodworth was saying he didn't know the man, Mr. Bell in this case, and that he was just an innocent bystander, didn't know anything, just heard some gunshots and felt something hit his back.
Investigators search for evidence. They recover 2 .25 caliber shell casings.
The other thing you want to immediately do is start to canvass the area, especially for cameras. And then you want to find anybody that's close by that may have observed what happened. One of the people that called 911, her and her daughter got a good look at two males that walked past their house.
They described them as wearing dark clothing.
They saw two black men in their 20s approach the victim. A few minutes later, shots rung out.
And then they saw them go past back by their house, go back to a vehicle they described as a white SUV that then left the scene. They didn't see them with a gun. They didn't see them actually shoot anybody. They just saw them going to the crime scene and then leaving the crime scene.
Police put out an APB with the descriptions. Then, less than an hour after the initial 911 calls, detectives get an update on Walter's condition.
His bleeding was internal, so there wasn't much that they could do. Walter was pronounced dead at the Upstate University Hospital.
Now they have a homicide investigation on their hands.
Ziploc knows your secret recipes should be shared.
19th, 2012. Police in Syracuse, New York are investigating a shooting when they learn that one of the victims, 30-year-old Walter Bell, did not survive. Detectives go to the hospital where doctors have recovered the bullet from Walter's body.
It was a small .25 caliber, consistent with the two shell casings that were found up the street.
Hospital staff tell detectives that the victim's fiancée, Latia Walker, is on the phone. She has just been informed of the shooting.
The detective asked me what my name was, where did I live, how soon could I get to the hospital? And I said to him, I don't even know where, I don't know where anything is. I've only been in town for 6 weeks. I would have to figure out how I'm getting there. And I told him I had my kids.
Detectives agreed to meet Latia at the hotel where she and Walter have been staying since arriving in town.
They showed up, they knocked on the door. And one of them asked me to step outside with him. The other one stayed inside with the kids. And he told me that Walter didn't make it. At that point, I lost all hope for everything. Everything.
Latia explains that earlier in the evening, she and Walter had been at the hotel when he received a phone call.
It was his cousin calling and saying, he wanted to spend some time with him and things of that nature. So Walter decided to go with him. Walter left the motel probably around 4:30, 5 o'clock. Anytime Walter goes anywhere, when he gets to where he's going, he always called me to let me know he made it to where he was going okay. So I called Walter about 6:45, 7 o'clock. He's like, yeah, I'm all right. I just, I lost track of time. I forgot to call you, my bad. And he's like, but I'm gonna call you before I come home because I wanna know what you need from the store. So I said, okay. Around 7:55, he called me. Automatically, I'm thinking he's in the grocery store. Let me tell him what I want. So I'm like, yeah, I want some strawberries and I want some bananas and make sure you get some cereal for the kids for in the morning. And he's like, Tia, stop. I said, well, what? Tia, I've been shot. He sounded okay, and I thought he was playing with me.
For about a whole minute of that phone call, she believes he's joking.
He says, no, I've really been shot. And then he's paused. His whole demeanor, everything changed. He paused, and now I'm taking him seriously because now I could tell something is wrong. And so I started going into questions. Where are you at? Tell me where you are. What's going on? Where were you shot? I'm asking 1,000,001 questions, and the only thing he's saying is that he couldn't breathe. I can't breathe. Oh my God, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Then he stops for a minute, and then he says, I love you and the kids, and to take care of the kids. He stopped responding. We've always had the relationship of getting to one another when we needed it. and I couldn't get to him. I didn't know where he was.
Desperate and unsure what to do, Latia started calling local hospitals.
The only thing that could go through my head was, what am I gonna do now? Well, I'm here by myself. I got my kids. How am I gonna tell these kids?
Police ask Latia if she knows anyone who might have been after Walter.
They want to know exactly what could have caused this homicide, if he had any enemies or any known people in the area that would want to harm him. Latia makes them aware that they had literally just moved.
He had just really come here from South Carolina with his family, and then before that was from Long Island.
The only information Latia has is that Walter had been with his cousin in the hours before he died.
I thought he had gotten into it with somebody. That's the only, explanation that I could have come up with.
She gives the address where Walter's cousin lives, just a block away. Investigators hope that he can shed light on what went down in Walter's final hours.
At this point, detectives have more questions than answers.
It's really about talking to people.
Both of them was from New York, so they was like, okay, well, we just want to go to New York together and see how, like this work out. So it's like this was an opportunity for them both to start a new life. I just had this feeling about him in New York. Tia called me on that night, and she was just crying, screaming, yelling, like, I'm like, Tia, what's wrong? Like, calm down, like, what's wrong? When she finally got it together, she said Walter been shot. It was hard. It was very hard, especially she was in New York at the time and I was in South Carolina. I just feel like it was the worst night of my life.
Sponsored by the all-new Lexus GX. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
Waking off the grid.
Is this where we're sleeping?
Nah, come up here. Check it out.
Well played, Dad.
Live up to it. The all-new Lexus GX.
Do you want to close out?
Should I? Normally I'd hold, but taking the gains is smart here. Right?
Feel more confident with stock ratings from JP Morgan analysts in the Chase app. When you've got a decision to make, the answer is JP Morgan Wealth Management.
This summer's hottest blockbuster isn't a movie. It's a spicy new wrap from Jimmy John's, starring ghost pepper cheese and introducing firecracker chips. The reviews are in. This summer, it's gonna be a hot one. Jimmy John's new firecracker wrap.
They say you're better safe than sorry. But they say a lot of things. In 1953, they said our whiskey recipe tasted perfectly fine, so we burned it and made something better. Maker's Mark. Make your mark.
Tap water. How come?
Well, because...
Whoa.
Just hours after the fatal shooting of Walter Bell, Syracuse detectives head to the residence where Walter's cousin lives with friends. Police learn they had welcomed Walter when he arrived in Syracuse.
Mr. Bell had lived with them when he first moved up from South Carolina. They were very cooperative.
The group tells police that Walter was still learning the nuances of street politics on the North Side. In fact, they said Walter made a near-fatal blunder a couple days before by walking on Catherine Street, the same street where he ultimately lost his life.
They told us that he had been shot at just a couple days before that, less than half a block from the incident. And his friends that they lived with on Lodi Street, which is right around the corner, warned him and kept telling him, hey, you shouldn't hang out over there.
Investigators consider whether Walter was unknowingly caught up in a neighborhood feud.
Mr. Bell may not have been a direct target.
They don't know if the target was Walter Bell or if it was Shivoki Bloodworth.
Detectives asked the group what they know about the other shooting victim. They say that despite what he told police at the scene, Walter and Shivoki did know each other.
Mr. Bloodworth and Mr. Bell were known as friends. They would often hang out together.
Investigators question why he would hold back.
Now, investigators want to talk to Shivoki Bloodworth to see exactly what he knows.
Before they do, one of Walter's friends offers information about a man he says is at the center of the neighborhood feud.
We heard the name of Mr. Acevedo from the friends of Mr. Bell. All he knew by his nickname, so he accompanied the police in an unmarked vehicle and pointed out the house that it turns out to be Mr. Acevedo's house.
Unfortunately, he isn't home. Investigators shift their focus back to Shivoki Bloodworth and conduct a background search.
Mr. Bloodworth had been involved in the criminal justice system. He had been arrested for dealing drugs. There was some robbery, type street robbery thing. There was probably a dispute that turned bad. So he had been around, he had been in the game, as we'll say.
In the early morning hours of October 20th, Shivoki Bloodworth agrees to come to the station for another interview. At first, Shivoki maintains his story, saying he didn't know Walter Bell or anything about the shooters.
The detective, as he was talking to him, and this is over a course of a few hours, finally told him, he said, listen, the guy that you were standing there next to, he did pass away. And Mr. Bloodworth actually became emotional over this and broke down in tears. Mr. Bloodworth told the detective that, he goes, okay, he is a friend of mine. I see him every day. And he actually even said that he felt he was a father figure to him. So then he gave a little bit more information.
Shivoki admits he has been involved in the feud and fears that he was the intended target of the shooting, not Walter.
But that's oftentimes how it works. The bad guys, they don't care. They'll take collateral damage. And oftentimes it's revenge, retaliation, revenge, retaliation.
Shivoki still says he didn't see who fired the shots, but thinks there could be a clue in Walter's dying words.
Mr. Bloodworth even tells the detective that our victim, Mr. Bell, says, look out for streets, as he's dying.
Detectives recognize the nickname.
John Lundy was on parole and had just gotten out of state prison.
26-year-old Drawn is often spotted around town with his brother, 21-year-old Quincy.
Quincy and John Lundy were known to the police. They had been involved in the criminal justice system, being arrested on numerous different occasions for a variety of crimes.
That sets off a bunch of bells in the detective's head, because those brothers have a long rap sheet in the area.
Hours of the fatal shooting of Walter Bell. Investigators have the names of two men who may have been involved.
John Lundy actually had just gotten out of prison. Quincy, who's the younger brother, also has multiple arrests in the area for misdemeanors and felonies, and was also shot himself back in 2009.
Before they reach out to the brothers, investigators attempt to track down the man Walter's friends said was at the center of a neighborhood feud, 20-year-old Jason Acevedo.
Mr. Acevedo was attempted to be located a few different times. Once they finally locate him, he was very uncooperative and denied knowing anything.
Detectives refuse to give up. They continue to press Acevedo for information.
It's almost a lost art, is that one-on-one communication and trying to win over people, get them to give you information. Really is an art form. And, you know, those are the detectives that are the better detectives are people that know how to do that and actually can spend that time necessary to build a relationship.
Eventually, Jason admits to a feud between himself and the Lundy brothers.
He actually gives some of the story, the backstory too, of him being involved in physical altercations with Quincy Lundy, of actual physical fights that occurred in the street in the weeks leading up to the death of Mr. Bell.
Following the interview, investigators begin piecing together the puzzle. In the months prior, the Lundy family had filed a police report.
The Lundy's parents called in that their house was shot up. The police respond, police do a report, they look for shell casings, do what they can to investigate the crime.
No one was charged. But now, investigators consider whether Jason Acevedo was responsible.
He described the fight that he had with Mr. Lundy. He kind of got the worst of it. So that probably is what led to the shootings up of the homes of the Lundy brothers.
The belief that Acevedo was responsible left the Lundy brothers thirsty for revenge.
Their house was shot up in the months leading up to Mr. Bell's death. So they were probably going to exact revenge.
Investigators are still unsure how Walter and Shavoki got caught in the crossfire. They return to the eyewitnesses who described seeing two men flee from the scene of Walter's shooting. Investigators present them with a photo array containing mugshots of Drawn and Quincy Lundy.
They have a really good witness who identifies them, which is pretty powerful because she doesn't know them, was able to quickly point them out of a photo array. Not enough to arrest them, but then everything kept coming back to them.
Detectives reach out to the brothers, who agree to come in for a statement.
Both Lundy brothers voluntarily came in. They didn't arrive together, as I recall, but they were interviewed the same day. They didn't admit to doing this crime, but they admitted that Quincy Lundy was involved in fights with other people that hang out in that area, including Mr. Acevedo.
Quincy says he was not there. He was at home with his mom watching television. Drawn says he's nowhere near Catherine Street during the shooting. He wasn't even on the north side. And that was something that could be easily verified at that time because he had on an ankle bracelet.
Drawn was released from New York State Prison 11 months earlier with a GPS tracking device as a condition of his probation.
The detectives spoke with parole officials. They had said that Mr. Lundy was nowhere near Catherine Street at the time of this incident.
Now they have an eyewitness on scene saying that it was the Lundy brothers, which is a complete contradiction from what they found out from the ankle monitor.
Investigators consider an alternative theory.
They're looking as, okay, so maybe Drawn wasn't there. It was Quincy there with someone else, right?
But Quincy's mom backs up his alibi, stating her son was with her on the night Walter was killed.
Now, mom, sometimes, they could be looking out for their kid, right? So we'll take that with a grain of salt, but the mom seemed earnest enough when she was interviewed and pretty certain. So the detectives were kind of back to square one.
The investigation stalls. Walter's loved ones are left in the lurch. Grieving, pregnant, and alone, Latia lives in fear.
Everybody's worried about me now because I'm in a place where I don't know anyone. I don't have any support. I left Syracuse within 24 hours of Walter passing. And I moved back to Long Island. I stopped speaking to detectives. Reason being, I started getting calls on my personal phone, and it would be people portraying to be detectives. And so now I didn't trust anyone. And I still didn't quite know the story of what happened, so I'm scared. I don't trust anyone, and I felt like they were trying to figure out where I had moved to. And I didn't want anyone to know where I was.
Hey, there he is.
How you been?
In the months following the murder of Walter Bell, his friends and family members are overwhelmed by the loss. 3 months after his death, Walter's daughter is born.
I gave birth January 29th, 2013. And she was born prematurely. She was born at 28 weeks. When I looked at my baby, I looked at her and I broke down and cried. Reason being, the first thing that I saw when I looked at her, she looked just like her dad did, laying in the casket.
He always talk about when I have a little girl, her name's gonna be Destiny Nicole Bell. All the time, he just wanted a little girl. He got what he finally wanted, and he's not here for it.
Adding to the family's pain, the investigation into Walter's murder is at a standstill. His killer, or killers, are still out there. In the summer of 2013, almost 9 months after the shootings, Jason Acevedo is arrested in connection with a string of burglaries. But Jason has another crime on his mind.
Mr. Acevedo, with his conjunction with his lawyer, thought it might be in his best interest to now cooperate in this case to give a more satisfactory resolution to his pending felonies. So his lawyer reached out to the police and the district attorney's office and volunteered his client to cooperate.
Jason reveals that he was there when Walter Bell was shot and can tell them exactly who committed the crime.
Prosecutors make a deal, offering Jason Acevedo a reduced sentence in exchange for testimony.
Jason reveals that on October 19, 2012, he was standing on the sidewalk talking to Walter Bell and Shavoki Bloodworth when he was approached by the Lundy brothers. And it was at that point, shots rang out.
Acevedo says both Lundy brothers pulled out guns and started firing at him, Walter, and their friend, Shavoki Bloodworth.
It appears from the investigation, Mr. Acevedo was actually a primary target. That's probably the guy they really would like to have shot that night.
But Jason escaped unscathed. He fled the scene and didn't know Walter had been killed until he saw it on the news 2 weeks later.
His background, if you will, his basis of knowledge that he finally comes through with is pretty high. And so, his credibility, though he's looking out for his own best interest, his credibility in this case is good.
But his statement goes against what would appear to be irrefutable evidence. The data from Drawn Lundy's ankle bracelet.
So that's when they would go back to the ankle monitor and actually start to look at it more closely. In Onondaga County, we have a crime analysis center. One of the analysts there, they were able to look at it more scientifically, and that's when they realized that that the first parole officer looked at it and misread it, or possibly wasn't looking at the actual time that the detective gave him. All of a sudden, okay, boom.
Drawn, in fact, was on Catherine Street that night. At that point, detectives immediately issue a warrant for Drawn Lundy's arrest for the second-degree murder of Walter Bell.
Based on Jason Acevedo's statement, authorities also issue an arrest warrant for Quincy Lundy. He turns himself in.
He was re-interviewed, but didn't give a lot of information. He was arrested for murder in the second degree.
Drawn Lundy remains at large.
They asked the family for Drawn to call them. They had said, well, he's in Texas somewhere. He actually does call the detectives within a day or two and actually left an address that he lived in. But the address was was a fraudulent one. So the U.S. Marshals Task Force in that area started to knock on doors and see if they could find Mr. Lundy.
Marshals and putting pressure on his family.
The police up here in Syracuse still knocking on grandma's and parents' doors. Those efforts must have been enough. Mr. Lundy actually, within a few days thereafter, walks in and turns himself in to a police department down outside of Dallas, Texas. And then he's arrested and later extradited back here to face the charges.
When they finally get Drawn Lundy in custody, he's sticking to the story that he was not anywhere near Catherine Street and that he only heard about the gunshots. But police knew there was more to the story.
Drawn and Quincy Lundy are tried together in October 2014. Latia attends the trial with Walter's mother.
I want to look these guys in their face. I want to know what happened and why it happened.
Deputy Mark Chapman is assigned to transport the brothers to and from court each day.
My partner and I were present throughout the whole trial because of the brothers' custody status. They looked like, college students. They were very quiet, very disciplined in the courtroom.
Quincy Lundy's attorney sticks to the story that Quincy has nothing to do with this shooting and he was at home with his mother. And his mother continues to corroborate the story. She takes the stand to testify for him, but Quincy himself doesn't take the stand. Drawn, on the other hand, takes the stand in his own defense. He admits to the criminal history and admits to the feud with Acevedo, but is adamant about the fact that he had nothing to do with the shooting and did not shoot anyone.
This case was, somewhat circumstantial. We didn't have a murder weapon. They didn't have fingerprint evidence. They didn't have DNA evidence. There wasn't, clear, perfect video. There wasn't a confession. I pictured myself as a juror saying, this could go either way.
Prosecutors attempt to bolster their case by calling the county medical examiner.
Dr. Stoppinger's testimony, they have ways to follow the bullet path as it enters and potentially exits the body. The doctor testified that it appeared that the rounds striking Mr. Bell came from a downward angle. After his testimony, the court took a brief recess. We escorted both brothers from the courtroom to a holding area adjacent to the courtroom and secured them in a holding cell.
Officer Chapman and his partner listen in as the brothers discuss the testimony.
Quincy Lundy said, this doctor is very good for us, for our case. And they then went on to say that it's good for us because we were shooting from up the hill. My partner and I, we look at each other in kind of disbelief. We're like, they basically just confessed to each other that they were shooting.
When the trial resumes, the deputies tell prosecutors what they overheard.
I was hesitant, but law enforcement, we have to adapt. And we did. We testified to exactly what we heard that day.
On October 24th, 2014, the jury returns its verdict.
They were both found guilty of murder in the second degree in Honda County Court and were sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. It wasn't just justice for Walter Bell and his family. It was an effort to stop the violence, right? We're always looking to try to stop the violence because this would have kept going.
When the verdict came in, I got a call from Tia. I was happy, But I said, still don't take away the pain because, I mean, it's no sin it's gonna amount to the amount of pain that they caused us. I guess you just have to learn to deal with it.
Light. How much darkness will you tolerate? How much fear are you willing to stomach? Does knowing the man you love is a monster make you one, too?
I don't think Ashley was a monster. I see her as somebody who was in a lot of pain, who probably felt unloved and like she couldn't trust anybody in the world, and that she was willing to accept connection from anybody, even a monster, who would end up killing her.
Ashley believed she was building a future with Ricky Gray, but in the end, she was digging her own grave.
They say, find a man that treats you like a queen, who showers you with love, attention, and the finer things in life. But what if your king begins to lose the throne? The kingdom you've built together begins to crumble. Would you get out while you still can? Or stay by his side as everything falls apart? February 8th, 1995, Elkton, Maryland. It's late Wednesday morning, and 2 state troopers are watching traffic on one of the town's main roads.
So the police were out patrolling the streets as they usually do.
Suddenly, a sedan with New York plates speeds past.
The vehicle was going well above the speed limit.
So the police turned on their sirens and pursued the vehicle.
Fortunately, the driver pulls over without incident.
They asked to see his driver's license.
In reviewing the young man's ID, the troopers learn he is 27-year-old Alan Tate, and he lives 140 miles away in Brooklyn, New York.
Alan Tate, he's just acting suspiciously.
During the traffic stop, Alan was visibly nervous, almost panicking.
When the troopers ask to see Alan's vehicle registration, they notice something even more alarming.
When Alan reached for his registration, the officer saw a little baggie of white powder.
Then those antennas go up, and then cops thinking something's not right.
The troopers order Alan to get out of the car.
Cop brings him out, searches the vehicle, and then bingo.
In the trunk of the car, they find a black bag full of cash, drug paraphernalia, and 300 grams of crack cocaine.
That's over $15,000 worth of drugs.
That amount of drugs, it's not for personal use. It's an intent to sell.
For the authorities, this traffic stop turned drug bust is only the beginning.
He's definitely working for somebody. So they want to find out who is he working for and how big of an operation this is.
But to take this case all the way to the top and catch the kingpin, authorities will need the cooperation of his queen.
She was loyal to him. She was ride or die, by his side.
"18-year-old Michelle Miles was proud to be a Brooklyn native.
Michelle grew up in the Marcy Projects, which is public housing in New York City.
These housing projects, are tight-knit.
We did a lot of singing and dancing and all those things. And when we got together, we did have fun. Michelle was known for her warm personality. She just had a really sweet spirit. It was almost very innocent.
She's kind-hearted. She would always give me a hug. She would always make me laugh.
Life in the projects wasn't always easy, but Michelle kept her head held high.
Michelle's biological father wasn't really in the picture, so it fell really on her mother to support the family.
What you find oftentimes in the urban areas is that there's just not a whole lot of opportunities out there.
Regardless of her family's circumstances, Michelle was determined to be successful.
She was on the road to finishing high school, and she aspired to go to college.
Michelle wanted to be able to take care of herself as well as her family.
One afternoon, Michelle met a fellow Marcy Projects resident that would change her life forever. 30-year-old Stanley Burrell. We were sitting outside, me and a few friends on a bench. He happened to come in the direction where we were. And he was like, "Can I talk to you for a second?" And I was like, "Me?" Michelle was stunned by the older man's attention. Stanley had a reputation around the neighborhood. His name was out there. Everybody was talking about him, girls, guys, whoever.
All the girls wanted him. He had swag, he had clout, he had it all.
That's kind of what attracted me to him. Rumor had it that Stanley didn't exactly get his money the legal way. But Michelle was still smitten.
We knew he a drug dealer, he got money.
Drug dealing wasn't necessarily frowned upon in the neighborhood. Sometimes it's revered. It's kind of reinforced from all angles. We have it in our music, we have it in our TV.
Stanley told Michelle he'd had his eye on her for a while. He was like, "Oh, I heard you ain't got no man. You need somebody to take care of you." I guess it reeled me in.
Stanley was very smooth in his approach. Him being older and more mature, it coaxes her, it massages her self-esteem.
When Stanley asked to take Michelle out on a date, she jumped at the opportunity.
Someone such as Stanley, the second that person speaks to you, you don't lose out on the opportunity. It could be a once-in-a-lifetime shot.
Stanley took her to a movie, a nice dinner, very romantic.
He laid it on thick, gave her the love, showed her all the things that she wanted.
No man had ever treated Michelle the way this man did. He treated her just like a princess.
Stanley may have made Michelle feel like a princess when he wined and dined her. But in the bedroom, he made her feel like a queen. I thought it was amazing. I really did, because he did things to me that I was like, okay, I never had that done.
The attraction between the two of them, it was magnetic.
Here was this man who told her she was beautiful, told her he wanted to be with her, and she fell in love, and she fell hard.
Soon, the couple took their relationship to the next level. Michelle moved in with Stanley, and her entire lifestyle changed.
I saw from her not having anything to having things now, like nice clothes, nice sneakers.
I stayed with the ladies, though, whatever they had at the time.
She was like the queen of the projects. My man is Stan. He's the guy who runs things. So it actually gave her a badge of honor.
But Michelle didn't realize that badge of honor would one day make her a target and force her to choose between her freedom or her man. February 8th, 1995. Maryland state troopers have just discovered drugs in the trunk of Alan Tate's car.
There's scales, there's packaging, and there's also money.
This wasn't just some random guy's drug stash. This guy's a drug courier.
The state troopers take Alan into custody.
The police know that if he's the one transporting the drugs, he's working for somebody. Their next objective is to find out who he's working for.
Back at the station, Maryland police have gotten the FBI involved.
They know this is a bigger operation, so the feds come in.
When the police see someone carrying this big of an amount of drugs, they consider it a really big deal.
When FBI agents sit down with Alan Tate, it doesn't take long for him to crack.
He says he's just the driver, and the people that they really should be looking for are Stanley Burrell and Michelle Miles.
As Alan starts to tell his story, he'll launch a 2-year undercover operation to take down one of New York's biggest drug rings and reveal the tumultuous relationship at the center of it all.
So this couple thought that they were untouchable, that they were above the law.
In the summer of 1990, 18-year-old Michelle Miles fell hard for 30-year-old rumored drug dealer Stanley Burrell.
He was a lot older than her. Michelle was young, but she loved him. That was her man.
He enticed me. He told me, oh, I could take care of you. And I said, oh, maybe there's some truth to that.
The guys that are hustling, you know, selling drugs, they have the swag, they have the juice.
He gave her gifts, gave her a sense of self as well as support.
In the project, they was considered the king and queen.
But Michelle would soon learn the flashy new lifestyle her man afforded her came at a price.
Michelle had no idea that her newfound love was about to cost her everything.
February 8th, 1995. FBI agents are sitting down with 27-year-old Alan Tate.
His vehicle was searched, and they discovered 300 grams of crack cocaine.
It's clear to cops that Alan is just a driver. So what they want to know now is, who's running the show?
Alan Tate was claiming to be a courier for Stanley Burrell and his girlfriend, Michelle Miles.
Alan claims to have a wealth of information about Stanley and Michelle.
He claims that in addition to working with the couple, he was actually good friends with them as well.
Alan explains Stanley had been involved in the drug game for a while before he started dating Michelle. But eventually, Stanley decided to introduce Michelle into the business.
Alan remembers one night where he and some of the other members of the organization were in a Brooklyn apartment that was not too far away from the projects. This is pretty much a trap house. They were dividing drugs and packaging them for distribution.
At one point, Stanley showed up with Michelle.
So I went into the room and I seen the drugs.
Stan explained to her that that was crack cocaine. And in the other pile, there was heroin.
According to Alan, Michelle seemed taken aback.
She'd heard some rumors, but he had never brought her around the organization.
I never seen it, nor was I around it. I've never seen it up close like that.
Alan says then Stanley requested something from Michelle that no one expected.
Stanley asked me if I would help him package the drugs. And I was like, are you serious?
Michelle was in total shock. This was a huge leap into Stanley's reality.
Alan says Stanley began to coax Michelle and assure her that everything would be okay.
He told her to trust him. He wouldn't let anything happen to her, but he needed her help.
She had a major sense of loyalty to him, to stick by his side.
Eventually, Michelle conceded to her man.
I gave in because I was in love with him. I'm going to do what I can to keep him.
Alan tells detectives that he saw a turn in Michelle that night.
When she first got there, she was scared, she was nervous. By the end of the night, she was packaging drugs like a pro.
She would do whatever he asked her to do, with no questions about it.
I was ride or die.
With Stanley's guidance, Michelle gradually became a key player in the organization.
Stanley taught me to purchase drugs. He taught me to cook them, and he taught me to package them as well.
She was called the master chef. She was called the get money chick.
In fact, Alan claims Michelle became the one keeping track of all the money.
His friends collected the money. After they did that, the money would come to me.
Alan says Stanley was giving Michelle a solid cut of their profits.
He gave me $1,100 a week. Making that $1,100 a week was very appealing to me at that age.
They was king and queen. Everybody knew they had money. They running everything.
But according to Alan, by the summer of 1994, there started to be trouble in paradise for the couple.
I found out that Stan is messing with someone else.
Alan says it all came to a head one night at the trap house.
Suddenly, Michelle burst through the door and is asking, "Where's Stanley? Where's Stanley?"
They're trying to tell her that he wasn't there.
But Michelle made a beeline for the bedroom.
I go to the back, and then I caught them. So we start fighting. And then he come and trying to pull us apart. He eventually separated us.
Alan says things only escalated from there.
I knew where he kept his weapon. So I went and got the gun. He knew I knew how to use the gun because he taught me how to shoot. I'm like, whoop, bitch.
After the woman left, Michelle was still clearly distraught.
I'm sick. Like, I'm really literally like sick. Like, how can he do this? He was trying to talk to me. I didn't want to hear anything he had to say. Words wouldn't even come out my mouth at that point.
But Alan says as Stanley continued to beg for forgiveness from Michelle, her demeanor changed.
He said whatever to convince me not to leave him. And I stayed with him, even after that. I didn't want to lose whatever we had.
She didn't want to lose the connection that she had with Stanley. He was not only a friend, a lover, he was her everything.
Men like Stanley, they manipulate and they take advantage of you for their own benefit. She loved him authentically. He really just wanted to use her as bait to help him make money, to help him survive.
Alan claims Stanley continued to sleep around on Michelle and even got another woman pregnant. But Michelle still stayed faithful.
I was doing everything against all that I saw, and I still continued to stay in that relationship. At no point I didn't break my loyalty to him, no matter how angry I had become with him. It was easier to stay than to walk away.
Alan says their drug operation grew bigger and bigger, despite the tumultuous relationship between Stanley and Michelle.
Michelle happened to be right alongside of Stan, organizing, cutting up. She is the queen pin.
He had a lot of people working for him. While he wasn't around, he kind of like had me in control of who got what and when. And whatever went out, I had to keep a mental note. And he would know from me what was where and if it was running low.
With Alan's statement in tow, investigators decide to move in on Stanley and Michelle. But nabbing the pillars of this drug operation will prove easier said than done.
She wasn't about to turn him in. She's willing to risk it all to stay with him.
Michelle was looking for love in all the wrong places. You end up wanting to be with this person, or a person is giving you some attention, and the attention that you've lacked your entire life. And now someone is promising you a future, and they end up taking you somewhere that you never thought that you would end up. She was really misguided into a lifestyle that wasn't something that she would have done on her own.
February 1995. The FBI is investigating a Brooklyn drug operation run by kingpin Stanley Burrell and his girlfriend, Michelle Miles.
Michelle was functioning kind of as Stanley's office or business manager.
Michelle helped essentially cook and package, then track the money and the product of Stanley's whole operation.
Law enforcement was tipped off to the couple after apprehending Alan Tate. He was actually one of the drug couriers who was caught delivering crack cocaine.
Now that Alan has told all, federal and local authorities launch a major investigation of the drug ring based inside the Marcy houses. Determined to get Michelle and her man, the task force puts the community under heavy surveillance.
The feds have so much and so many resources. They will set up cameras over by traffic lights. They will bug payphones. Surveillance through helicopters. When the feds are following you, it's unlimited.
The police are arresting as many associates of Stanley and Michelle as they can to get those key witness statements.
Every time that someone was picked up from the Marcy houses, Stanley's name came up. His name just kept coming up.
It doesn't take long for word of the investigation to filter back to Stanley.
It was a well-known fact within the projects that Stanley was under investigation and the feds were looking for him.
Stanley, he was high, and
Stanley is always on the move. He's always staying in different places, trying to stay ahead of the investigation.
Yet even with Stanley lying low and the Marcy houses buzzing with word that the feds are gunning for him, Stanley assures Michelle that she isn't in danger.
He told me the feds wasn't looking for me, they was looking for him.
In order for Stanley to stay low, he sends Michelle out to do his drug runs for him.
He asked me to go uptown to purchase the drugs. My life was going downhill from there. I knew I was allowing a lot of that stuff in my life, but I still kept going. So I said, okay, I'll go.
She would sacrifice herself if she had to please her man.
Little did Michelle know, she was being watched. The next morning, with this new surveillance in tow, the feds are finally ready to act.
The FBI feel they have enough information and they're ready to close the investigation. It was time to close in on Michelle and Stanley.
As Michelle heads to her car in the fall of 1997, 2 years after the investigation began, undercover agents are waiting outside her home.
I see this car that's parked outside. I said something strange about this vehicle because the only people who parked on that block was the people that live there.
Moments later, the agents make their move.
2 people jump out, guns pointing at everything. And I'm looking like, oh, I'm gonna get kidnapped.
But in the next instant, Michelle realizes these are no kidnappers.
They pulled their badges out. That's when I knew I'm going to jail.
They immediately have her put her hands behind her back and they place her under arrest.
Now that they have Michelle in custody, the agents press her to give up her boyfriend, the kingpin of the drug operation, Stanley Burrell.
I'm sitting there. They questioning me. Where's Stanley? So they was like, you need to tell us if he in there.
Their main objective is to get to Stanley.
In the fall of 1997, federal agents have just arrested 25-year-old Michelle Miles outside her Brooklyn apartment for her participation in an extensive drug trafficking operation. Now that they have Michelle in custody, investigators' priority is locating her man and kingpin of the organization, 37-year-old Stanley Burrell.
They had reason to believe he was somewhere in the house where they just arrested Michelle.
But when police ask Michelle to tell them where Stanley is hiding inside, she refuses to cooperate.
I said, you got all the wrong information. I haven't seen him. Even though I know they know, and he was right in the house.
Law enforcement pressured her into pointing them in Stan's direction.
They said, this is your last chance to tell us, because we're going to go in there, we're going to go in there with force.
But Michelle doesn't budge.
I said, if that's what you're going to do, that's what you're going to do.
Even in the process of being arrested, there still was that sense of loyalty. You know, I'm riding for him.
With Michelle refusing to give in, authorities take a position outside the townhome and prepare for entry.
They were preparing essentially for the worst. Stanley could be armed and dangerous.
Authorities bust open the door and rush inside.
They did not see him immediately anywhere inside the house, so they decided to do a sweep of the home.
They eventually found him hiding upstairs in a closet.
Moments later, agents escort a handcuffed Stanley to the police cruiser.
They bring him out, sit him in the same vehicle that I'm in. He didn't know I was in there until he got in.
The stakes are high in this situation, but Stanley seems calm.
He didn't even have to say to me, Michelle, don't say anything, because he already knew I wouldn't.
Instead, all Stanley says is for Michelle not to worry.
Stanley was nonchalant about it. Like, they ain't got nothing. We good. They got nothing.
It's true. Law enforcement doesn't find any drugs inside Stanley and Michelle's home.
When you go to lock up a kingpin, you know there's not going to be any drugs there.
However, the search does uncover a different treasure trove of evidence.
They find stacks of cash. They found records of sales going back about 7 years.
Every kingpin, every major drug operation has to document the money. Who's owed, who needs to be paid. They're coded, but they're not too hard to decipher.
And they also found pictures of Stanley and his crew posing with money and with jewels and cars and showing off the fruits of their labor.
Before the morning's over, many of the people pictured will be in police custody.
Michelle and Stanley were among 16 people arrested.
After their search of the home, federal agents head back to the station and prepare to interview their suspects. They begin with Stanley.
Stanley doesn't say very much, kind of takes the position that, listen, that money that you found, I earned that money working on cars. I'm a mechanic, and this is how I made my living.
The agents don't believe a word of it.
They know Stanley is the head of the operation.
You had a bunch of men who pointed Stanley as the ringleader.
They also had surveillance of Stanley with known members of that drug ring.
As time moved on, Stanley asked for an attorney. All discussions are off.
With Stanley remaining tight-lipped, they hope they'll have better luck in their talk with Michelle.
The hopes is that she will turn on her boyfriend and give up information on Stanley.
When it's Michelle's turn in the hot seat, will she tell all? Or will she protect her man?
The feds told me, we know you know everything about Stanley Burrell and his organization, and if you tell us, we'll let you go.
She was being offered an opportunity and an outlet.
She has to make an incredibly difficult decision. She's either going to protect herself or protect her man.
In the fall of 1997, 25-year-old Michelle Miles and her boyfriend, Stanley Burrell, are both in federal custody.
This was pursuant to a NYPD and FBI joint task force targeted drug ring that was allegedly run by Michelle and Stanley.
When federal agents questioned Stanley, he denied everything.
Stanley maintains his innocence when questioned by law enforcement. He said, "I've never sold drugs, and if I was a drug dealer, why didn't you find any drugs in my home?"
Now, authorities are hoping they'll have better luck with Michelle.
They also know that Michelle is a big part of the operation, and she's probably privy to most of the information as far as how the operation works. So the object is to separate her, put her in a room, and apply pressure.
Once in the room with Michelle, the agents hold nothing back.
They tell Michelle they know that she's cooked, packaged, and handled money for Stanley and has gone on drug runs for him.
They inform her they have someone who's willing to testify that he was carrying drugs for Stanley and them.
That someone is drug courier turned informant Alan Tate, the man whose arrest triggered the entire investigation.
He made it out as if he worked for them, that he had a position within that organization, that he'd made trips on behalf of Michelle and Stanley.
They lay that on her. They tell her what she's dealing with, what she's facing.
This isn't like when you're busted for possession. Michelle was busted for a massive interstate drug conspiracy.
It's federal. Feds will put you away for life.
But even as the agents apply pressure, they also offer Michelle a way out by giving up Stanley.
They told me that they didn't want me. They wanted him. So if I helped them, they would let me go.
Given the circumstances, it's a tempting offer.
Michelle finds herself at crossroads, facing the biggest decision of her life. Protect myself, protect my man.
To investigators' surprise, Michelle remains faithful to Stanley.
My response was that where we came from, we don't snitch. I felt I needed to do that for my man.
This was her guy. This is her person. This was the love of her life. She was going to support him and she was going to ride for him.
Michelle's refusal to cooperate is a bitter disappointment for the agents who spent 2 years building the case against Stanley.
They thought they was going to break me, and they didn't.
After letting Michelle stew in a holding cell for several days, federal prosecutors approach her with one last offer.
They would allow her to plead guilty to a lesser charge if she in turn testified against Stanley.
Michelle's public defender urges her to take the deal. But once again, Michelle shocks everyone.
She'd refused to go along with the plea deal.
Not only does she say no, she fires her attorney.
I ended up petitioning the court to relieve the counsel that was on my case because he was telling that it was in my best interest that I cooperate, and I still was protecting my man.
She wouldn't give in. You know, she wouldn't save herself. She would rather save him than save herself.
Despite the things that she had been through in her past for Stanley, Michelle did so much to stay loyal to her man that didn't even stop after she was arrested.
Stanley, also in jail awaiting trial, coaxes Michelle to continue to keep quiet.
Me and Stanley, we sent letters back and forth. He was always like, I love you, you're going to be okay. I have your best interests at heart. Don't worry, everything is going to work itself out. They have nothing. This is all I've heard from the beginning. You're going to be fine. You're going to get out. They're not going to convict you.
The person she trusts the most, Stanley, is really guiding her.
I didn't break my loyalty to him. So now, I guess I have to fight.
But is Michelle making a grave mistake?
Michelle's welfare wasn't something that really crossed his mind.
He had some type of mind control or...
Stan just wanted to be aware of the moves that were being made by Michelle.
I think that Stanley loved Michelle, but he wasn't in love with her. You can't be in love with a woman and put her in that situation. You can love someone because of the person that they are. But if you're in love with someone, you would never put them in harm's way. So there's no way that he could have possibly been in love with her. Not by a long shot.
In February 1999, 27-year-old Michelle Miles and her 39-year-old boyfriend, Stanley Burrell, go on trial together in federal court.
They were both charged with conspiracy to distribute heroin and crack cocaine.
If convicted under some of these conspiracy-type statutes, you were looking at long sentences.
Despite facing as much as life in prison, Michelle has refused repeated offers of reduced charges if she would agree to testify against Stanley.
In spite of all of that had happened, Michelle was still in love with Stanley and still protecting her man.
This girl was loyal until the end. She couldn't see what was being done to her.
Stanley convinced me that I wouldn't get convicted.
In reality, the odds are stacked against Michelle and Stanley.
To help make his case, the prosecutor had documents, mountains of photographic evidence, a witness in Alan Tate, who was willing to testify against both Stanley and Michelle, and get a deal.
Many of the people arrested alongside Stanley and Michelle, their associates, runners, and lookouts, also take the stand.
Almost everybody turned on Stanley except Michelle.
In the end, Michelle's faith in Stanley proves misguided.
The final verdict was guilty on all counts.
Stanley didn't show any emotion, but Michelle, she was heartbroken.
I felt like my life was over. It didn't seem real at all. Nah, I thought it was a bad dream and I was going to wake up from it, but I knew it was real.
When the judge reads Michelle her sentence, it's clear her nightmare is only just beginning.
She got 360 months, which equates to 30 years.
I screamed because I said, how do I get 30 years in prison? How?
When it's Stanley's turn for sentencing, the judge doesn't go easy on the kingpin either.
He was sentenced to life in prison.
Michelle's refusal to testify against him and cooperate with prosecutors essentially was for nothing because Stanley still got the most severe punishment.
Now neither of them would be free.
From behind bars, and with the gravity of her sentence weighing on her, Michelle finally starts to break free from Stanley's grasp.
I just felt like, Michelle, you have to separate yourself from him. Because this man is going to be the death of you. Look at what I'm going through right now. Had I not continued on in this relationship, I wouldn't be here.
In 2016, after 19 years behind bars, Michelle gets an opportunity for a second chance at freedom.
President Obama launched the Clemency Project. It allows qualified federal inmates to petition to have their sentences commuted.
This program was aimed to help nonviolent drug offenders